Imagine, for a second, you're a detective. You have 3 witness testimonies for a huge event, and as you read them, you notice something weird. 2 of them match up almost perfectly, sometimes word for word, but then, all of a sudden, they go off in completely different directions. Well, that's the exact puzzle we're digging into today, the Synoptic problem. It's a genuine literary mystery right at the heart of the New Testament.
So here's the question that kicks everything off. How is it possible? When you sit down and read the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the similarities are just uncanny. It's not just that they tell the same stories, they often use the exact same Greek words in the exact same order. But then you hit a difference, and it's just as confusing. How do we explain this bizarre mix of sameness and difference?
Okay, first things first, let's get a key term out of the way. The word synoptic. It's from Greek, and it literally means looking together. And that is the perfect way to describe our 3 key witnesses, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Their accounts of Jesus' life are presented from a really similar viewpoint. You can almost lay them out in columns side by side and just look at them together. And it's this shared perspective that creates the whole puzzle.
So, let's officially open the case file. We've got our 3 witnesses, our 3 testimonies, and our job is to figure out the relationship between them. Who wrote first? Did they have copies of each other's work? Or maybe they were all pulling from some other source that we've never even seen.
Let's look at our first piece of evidence, because this is where it gets really interesting. Imagine you're reading the parable of the sower. In Matthew and Mark, you might find identical sentences just flowing along perfectly, and then boom, one of them changes a single tiny word for no obvious reason. Why would you do that? Big changes, you can understand. Maybe an author wants to make a different theological point. But these tiny, almost random changes, those are the clues that are really baffling. And honestly, it's those little details that make this whole puzzle so fascinating.
Now, those small details are crucial, for sure. But to really have a hope of cracking this case, we need to zoom out. We need to look at the big picture, analyze the data, and see what kind of patterns start to emerge.
Okay, now this chart is super revealing. Look at the breakdown of just the words they use. Check out Mark. Only 40% of its words are unique to it, and a massive 22% of its words agree with both Matthew and Luke. That is way more than the others. This makes Mark look like what scholars call the middle term. It's kind of like Mark has more in common with the other 2 than they have with each other, and that is a huge clue.
And this chart really visualizes it. Look at that massive chunk, about 480 verses, that appears in all 3 Gospels. That's the core of the shared story. But then look at that other interesting slice, Matthew and Luke only. We're talking 170 verses of material, stories, sayings that are in both Matthew and Luke, but are totally missing from Mark. This raises a massive question. If it's not in Mark, where on earth did Matthew and Luke get it from?
And another big clue is just the sequence of events. For the most part, yeah, the Gospels tell the stories in roughly the same order. But then you hit these really odd exceptions. For instance, the story of Jesus being tempted in the wilderness, it's told in a different order in Matthew than it is in Luke. Now, if you're just copying a story, why would you bother to change the order of events? It's another one of those puzzling little details.
So, with all this conflicting evidence, it's probably no surprise that this isn't a new mystery. Not at all. People have been trying to solve this puzzle for centuries. Let's take a quick look at how the investigation has changed over time.
Way back around 400 AD, a famous church father named Augustine came up with a pretty simple solution. Matthew wrote first, Mark basically wrote a shorter version of Matthew, and then Luke used both of them. Seemed plausible. But then, much later in the 1700s, scholars started thinking about a lost gospel, an original source that all 3 writers used. Then in the 19th century, another idea popped up. Maybe the authors just collected a bunch of little independent stories and stitched them together.
All those early theories kind of paved the way for what we have today, which we can call our prime suspect. In the world of modern scholarship, there's one theory that has really become dominant. It's called the 2-document hypothesis. And for many, it's the leading solution to this whole puzzle.
So the first pillar of this theory is something called Markosan priority. The idea is simple. Mark's Gospel was written first. It's the shortest, it's kind of the rawest account, and remember that data we saw? How Mark seems to be the middle term? Well, that strongly supports this idea. So the theory goes that both Matthew and Luke had a copy of Mark and used it as their main narrative source.
Okay, but what about all that material we talked about, the 170 verses that Matthew and Luke share, but that are not in Mark? Well, that's where the second pillar of the theory comes in. It's a mysterious, hypothetical, lost document simply called Q. The name just comes from the German word Quelle, which means source. Q is thought to have been a collection of Jesus' sayings and teachings that both Matthew and Luke had access to.
So here's how it all fits together, and it's actually pretty elegant. Matthew takes Mark's narrative framework, and then he weaves in all these sayings from Q. Meanwhile, Luke, working completely on his own, does the exact same thing. This theory neatly explains why Matthew and Luke share so much material with Mark, and also why they share all that other material just with each other. It all seems to fit.
It seems like a perfectly tidy solution, doesn't it? Case closed. Well, not so fast. Just like in any good mystery, when you look closer, there are some pretty serious cracks in this theory, enough to raise some reasonable doubt. And this right here is probably the biggest challenge to the whole theory. Think about it. If the author of Matthew was an actual eyewitness, one of Jesus' 12 apostles, why in the world would he need to copy so heavily, almost slavishly, from Mark, who, according to church tradition, got all his information secondhand from the apostle Peter? It's a really powerful question.
And that's not the only problem. For one thing, no one has ever found even a single scrap of paper from the Q document. It's still completely hypothetical. This theory also completely reverses what the early church unanimously said, which was that Matthew wrote first. And it still doesn't really explain those tiny, weird word changes, or why Luke would just decide to leave out a huge chunk of Mark's gospel.
So where does all this leave us? Well, not with a closed case, that's for sure. It leaves us with an ongoing investigation. The synoptic problem is just more complex than any one single theory can fully explain. And you know what? That's what makes it so fascinating and so enduring.
Because of all these challenges, a lot of modern investigators are starting to craft more nuanced solutions. They're not just picking one theory and sticking with it. They're trying to blend the hard data we get from the texts, like all that evidence for Mark being first, with the historical testimony from the early church, which points to a really strong oral tradition coming straight from the apostles.
And this brings us to our final thought. Maybe we've been asking the wrong question this whole time. What if this so-called problem isn't a flaw that needs to be fixed or solved? What if it's actually a feature? A feature that was designed to give us not just one, but three distinct, complementary, and in the end, a much richer and more multifaceted portrait of these events. It's definitely something to think about.